Hello everyone, welcome to the spoiler talk for The Punisher Season 1. Man, am I excited to do this one, because unlike the internet, I guess, I actually like this season. I think this season is actually pretty good. I've seen it a couple of times, and I am a fan, especially of Jon Bernthal's portrayal as Frank. And man, those yells really hit differently, don't they? It's just a perfect casting, if I do say so myself. Just like the last project in the MCU that I looked at, which was Tom Holland as Spider-Man. So this first episode starts off with Frank in the past playing guitar with his daughter, and then also in the present basically cleaning up what he started in Daredevil Season 2, because this is a sequel to that one, where he's basically cleaning up the cartel, the Irish, and the other ones who I don't really remember, but another evil gang. But he basically takes them all down, and then afterwards he burns his vest, and that was a short show. We're done. Alright, thank you for watching. Nah, it's not the end though, because during present day we see that Frank Castle is now working. He also has a beard and a full head of hair. To me, it's his best look, but you know what? People don't always agree with that one. But it was good enough for him to be brought back in Daredevil Born Again. But he is hitting a wall because he works for like a building destruction company, I guess. But he's just hitting that wall a lot. Everyone at the workplace hates him. Also, he goes now by the name Pete Castiglione, which is like, what kind of a last name is that? You know what? Whatever. I don't really care. And also, there's a new guy who works there named Donnie. And Frank really hates walls. He really hates walls, and also everyone hates him, basically. So then at home, he is reading Moby Dick and has nightmares about his family's being murdered, because of course he does. And also, we learn the reason the next day why the people don't like him is because of the fact that Frank just works really hard, and he actually doesn't get paid extra. He just starts hitting walls, and he doesn't stop until he's actually done. The thing is that he doesn't get paid for overtime unless they actually call on him to do overtime. However, all this free overtime that he's doing is kind of costing the rest of the guys their overtime, and they kind of need their overtime, so that's why they hate him. So then the guys destroy his food. So later on, he is sitting alone at the top of the building, his own quiet place, and Donnie isn't allowed to go with the guys. So Donnie goes up to Castle and tries to have a conversation with him, but Castle likes to be alone. However, he does get offered a free sandwich, so who can pass that up? So they're eating, they're talking. However, Frank is like, yeah, we're not friends, and I'm not looking for friends. Okay, I'm done with this. So later on, we see Curtis, another character in this show, who runs a therapy group for veterans, and he's talking to this guy named Lewis, who is gonna become way more important later on. Don't you worry about that one, but for now, he's not really important necessarily. Also, there's a guy there who's like, these liberals, and it's like, okay, you're one of those people taking our guns away. And it's like, well, I mean, to be honest, the free loss of guns have led to a lot of problems. So, yeah. And also, I personally live in a country where we're not allowed to have guns. So, I don't know. To be honest, I don't mind taking away guns, but I still feel like women should be allowed to have pepper spray on them. Just saying, you know, they should be allowed to have pepper spray on them, because sadly enough, it is the world that we live in. But after the group therapy session and everyone leaves, Castle comes in. He talks with Curtis. They were old war buddies, and he hands him Moby Dick again, and also grabs a bit of coffee. And Castle's like, dude, do you ever think about the war? It's like, yeah, but I made peace with it. It's like, yeah, but Afghanistan was different, dude. And that's also what we will be talking about later on as well. So then next up, we need to meet another new character named Madani, who wants to know what happened to her partner who died, named Zubair, and he died in Kandahar, which is also close to Afghanistan. It's all connected in that sense. And also, she gets a new partner named Stein, and her boss basically tells her to leave the whole Kandahar situation alone. But she is not going to do that, because she believes that United States soldiers were trafficking heroin, which, once again, we'll get back to that later on. But she's not gonna let this go. But then Madani wants Stein to get some info on a guy named Schoonover, remember him from Daredevil Season 2, and also on a guy named Castle. I don't know who he is. Sounds like a fantastic fellow anyway. Meanwhile, Donnie invited himself, because of the fact he was like, I'll pay for the first round with the guys to the bar, but yeah, there's a little bit of a problem with one of the guys, and he needs money in order to pay off the Gucci's or Gnucci's or whatever they were called. But the other guy's gonna ask his cousin for a job, and then Donnie has to pay for all the drinks, and not just the first round. And it's like, yeah, these guys are not they're pricks. That's what they are. But we all know trouble's gonna happen. So the next day, apparently the cousin has been contacted, and they are actually gonna rob the people that the dude needs to pay off. So that's gonna be fun. And the plan is all figured out until Castle basically was just sitting there drinking his coffee, I guess. And the guys are not happy about that, but then a workplace accident calls for a distraction, and the thing is, their driver was actually hurt pretty bad and needs to go to the hospital. So they kind of were like, we need to cancel. But then the one guy asked Donnie to drive, and Donnie's initially like, nah, I shouldn't do it. But then later on he's like, okay, I'm in. I guess he really just wants to make friends. I don't know. So at night they go and rob the place. However, things go wrong when Donnie's driver's license falls out, and I'm like, who would be stupid enough to put that thing in his shirt? He didn't put it in his pants, he put it in his shirt. It's like, that was guaranteed to happen. But this calls for problems, so they still get the money. They drive back to the construction place. Also, Frank had a nightmare and went back to the construction place to once again be an absolute racist against walls. A wallist, I guess. He is wall-phobic. But it's convenient that this happened because now the guys want to kill Donnie, but Donnie escapes, and they also turn on the mixer. And then when they throw Donnie into the cement, Frank appears and he's like, shut that off. And when they don't, he decides to go Punisher on them. He breaks them with his hammer and also kills them all, except for one guy who he wants some answers from. And he's like, alright, hey, where did all this go down? Because he does want to help Donnie, I guess. And then when he gets to the location, he's gonna find a nice home for his hammer. Kills the other guy, throws him down, throws a rope so that Donnie can escape, and now he heads over to the location where this all went down. And he shuts off the lights and kills everyone in complete Punisher style. And yeah, Punisher's kind of back, baby. My goodness, I've missed him. This whole episode was a bit of a slow burner, I will say that. I did enjoy it, especially because I know where it goes, but I did miss some Punisher action. But it is satisfying the way that the Punisher action happens in this one. And then the episode ends with a guy named Micro saying, welcome back, Frank. At least the subtitles told me that his name is Micro. And that is the first episode. And overall, like I said, slow burner, but not a bad episode. So let's see how episode 2 goes. So episode 2 starts off with Frank telling his kids a story that his daughter actually finishes. And then afterwards, his son says something that Frank doesn't like. And he gets a little bit rough with his son, but not rough enough. He's not gonna beat his son, don't worry about it. Don't ever say that again. That kind of stuff. Meanwhile, in present day, Castle goes to a cafe and he gets a call from someone named Micro, who then asks about the disc. And yeah, Frank isn't really happy about this, so he goes after the person, but turns out he was on top of the deli all along. So that's a bit of a shame. So now we have a new problem on our hands. So Frank goes home. He watches the disc that he got at the end of season 2 of Daredevil. And on it is basically a bunch of military guys killing that Zubair fellow that we saw at least a photo of in episode 1. It's all connected. So then he goes to Curtis, but Curtis didn't sell him out. And then we learned that Mandani apparently got to send the same video, and she wants to talk to a man named Billy Russo. But she can't do it openly, so she kind of needs to trick her boss. So she goes to her boss, is like, oh hey, there's this training facility from a company called Anvil. You know, that's how we can learn to train. And then they go through the training, where Stein basically fails the training, but also not really, because they still got most of the hostages out. One hostage who didn't listen being dead is not really the end of the world. We got the others out at the very least. And then she talks a bit to Billy, but then her boss Carson Wolf comes in and is like, hey, are you interrogating him? So then Russo's like, well, I mean, I guess you can talk about whatever you want over on a date. And she's like, okay, fine. Meanwhile, Frank apparently is homeless now, and we get the return of Karen, baby. Alright, I love Karen Page. The only Karen I tolerate outside of the AI in Spider-Man's suit. But that one is now a human, so that one's different. But he goes to Karen in order to see if she may have spilled something, and when she did not, he's gonna ask her for help about Micro. And he tells her the story that he knows, all the pieces that he has, and gives it to her. So Karen goes to Ellison, and who also comes back. Very nice to see him again as well. And he remembers a story from back in the day where apparently someone from NASA, I think, he leaked some info, and then a guy named Carson Wolf came in, and he kind of just made sure that that story was not printed. So he gives her the story. And I also like how Frank wants her to contact him by putting the flower by the window. It's such a simple thing, but it works. Meanwhile, Micro is spying on a family, and initially it is very creepy and weird, but then as they are talking, it's like, oh, that's your family. Okay, cool. So then Karen reveals the real name of Micro being David Lieberman, and Karen also would like to see Castle again, so she at least cares about him. Let's just say that. Let's not go any further, otherwise Twitter's gonna get mad at me. Because either I'd say it's a sibling relationship that they kind of have, people will be mad, and if I say they are in, you know, like maybe actually they're kind of like setting up maybe a potential relationship, people also get mad. I've seen both discourses online being very angry, so we're just gonna leave it there, but it's one of them two. So Castle goes over to the family, and he gets hit by the wife's car, and he then has a little bit of a talk with her. He learns more about David, very nice, and afterwards he helps her with the garage door. Then he leaves. Also, Micro was not happy about any of this. Then he goes home, gets a shave, fakes a limp in order to be able to get out of his apartment safely. And then he heads over to Carson Wolf. And he's here specifically because of Micro. So he beats up Carson Wolf. He interrogates him. But it doesn't really go the way that he plans because of the fact that Carson Wolf actually escapes and takes his gun from him. And then Castle's like, oh no, please don't kill me. And then takes off the mask like, oh, Frank Castle. Oh, but it's your fault your family's that. So now he went from Frank Castle mode to activating Punisher mode, because the moment that you mention his family, things are gonna go bad. But yeah, apparently Carson Wolf also had something to do with Castle's family being murdered, so that's gonna be fun. Alright, cool. So Punisher immediately just kills him, and then Madani and Russo are on a date, and she's interrogating him basically about Frank Castle, and Russo basically talks very positively about Frank. He's like, no, Frank is not a dirty guy, he doesn't do drugs, and also he didn't lose himself because he had something to hold on to, and then that got taken away from him, and see what happened. And yes, I condone all of his actions. That's basically what he says. However, the date gets interrupted because Wolf got killed, so that's a bit sad. And now Castle is gonna go after Micro. Micro calls him, he picks up the phone, and after a little bit, Castle instantly takes over the conversation like, no, now we're gonna do it the way that I want it to happen, okay? Simple as that. You're gonna drive to this location, and if you're not there in this amount of time, then there's gonna be problems. And he basically has Micro drive all over the place in order to see if he gets followed. And then eventually it ends with a graveyard where Curtis comes in and he's like, Frank doesn't like what you're selling. If you go after him again, he'll go after your family. Bye. So then Micro is a bit upset about this. He goes back to his base. He is very upset. However, then his trunk pops open and Castle pops out and he stands in front of him and knocks him out. And that's where the episode ends. And yeah, we're getting into the interesting stuff. So yes, we are still talking about his family. Turns out when we got rid of all of the gang members, yes, maybe there were other people that were also involved. Maybe Schoonover had a point when he said that Frank was the reason that his family died. So yeah, this is starting to get really interesting. Alright, it's kind of the interrogation episode, even though it's not really an interrogation episode. It's more of a seeing how far you can push Micro episode, because Frank has him strapped naked to a chair and he's not really interrogating him. He kind of is from time to time, but it's more like he's trying to kill his routine so that he will give up the information that he needs. It's kind of like that type of interrogation. However, there's a little bit of a problem because apparently the place is rigged to blow and Micro needs to do his thing in order to be able to stop the blowing up. And Micro does his thing, and then we get the reveal later on that he was an NSA analyst and that he assesses data. I don't fully understand it, but that's basically the gist of it. That's the stuff that I wrote down that I understood. However, one day he got a video from an anonymous source, the Kandahar video, and he was thinking about like going public with it, but his wife was like, yeah, maybe that's not the best idea, but also it's a good thing to do it. It's a difficult situation, but I don't really fully support it because I don't want you to blame me if it goes wrong. Simple as that. But David eventually was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway, so he sent the video over to Madani, and then during a car ride, he had to exit the car. He ran away, and then they shot him right in front of his wife and he fell into the ocean. However, he had a cell phone in his titty pocket, so that one caught the bullet. That was good enough. It's always one of those. It's either a coin or a cell phone. Even though technically a coin would have made more sense because the cell phone was like very visible. I was kind of looking at the cell phone. I was like, there's a cell phone right there. So he shot at the cell phone. It's like, you should have seen that cell phone was there. Whatever. Carson Wolf's an idiot. And then afterwards, you know, he survived for about a year, and then now we are basically back to present day. Also, Billy pays a visit to Curtis's place, and apparently he pays for the thing. So that's nice of him. Billy is one good guy, isn't he? Nothing bad about Billy Russo. He's a great guy. And he offers Curtis a job. He's like, you should really come and work for me. But Curtis is like, no, I got to do this stuff. And we also get some flashbacks to the military days, at least like the post-military days, but like the, I guess the special ops military days that Frank had, where they also get a new boss called Mr. Orange or Agent Orange or whatever. Codename Orange, that's what we'll call him right now. But later on in the episode, we learn that the place that Micro has is not rigged to blow. Instead, there are cameras everywhere, so that in case of his death, it will be broadcasted to the world. And, well, at that point, you know what? At least his family knows that he wasn't an actual traitor. There's also a scene that I like where you see, like, Micro just about to fall asleep. He just falls asleep, and then Frank just walks up to him with a bucket and throws water in his face. Absolutely, what a prick. But anyway, I guess then afterwards, it's the next day, and he wishes Frank a happy birthday, because apparently it's the 15th, which means it's Frank's birthday. However, when he types in the code again, he keeps the pen that he has, and he stabs Frank with it, so Frank kinda gets knocked out there. Also, we get a shot of Lewis almost shooting his dad, and that's very important to the season. I really like Lewis's storyline in this season, because it basically shows the wrong ways of, like, soldiers coming back from the war, and just not leaving the war behind, but taking it home with them. Also, Madani learns that Wolf had some offshore accounts, so it's kind of like, oh, so he was dirty. Yes, he was. He indeed was. And then we get to that famous mission that was talked about in Daredevil Season 2 with the flashbacks, with the Kandahar mission. So basically, they get their next mission, and Frank is immediately like, okay, that's a trap. You understand that's a trap, right? Because of who we are kind of a little bit famous here. That's a trap. If we go in there, we're gonna die. Simple as that. Or at least some of us are gonna die. Maybe not all of us, but some of us are going to die. It's a trap. But Orange is like, I don't care. I tell you what the mission is. Also, earlier, when Orange was introduced, Frank was like, as long as it's okay with Congress, it's like, and then Orange was like, yeah, it is. Sure it is. That'll come into play later, so I'll mention that right now. But anyway, they have to do the mission anyway, and we get to see the mission, which I actually find really cool. So you see Frank going into the building. Also, you see Schoonover again. Very nice to see Schoonover again, but he's missing an arm. But Frank goes into that building, he kills everyone, and I'm just like, how many weapons does he have? Because he has like a submachine gun at the beginning, or whatever he has at the beginning. Then afterwards, he also has a pistol. He has later on a shotgun, and then later on he got like the AK-47 from GTA. It's like, dude has a lot of weapons, but I guess he picked up the weapons from the dead bodies that he killed. You know, simple as that. But he basically takes the building, and then afterwards, Orange just comes and he's like, okay, did you kill the target? And then Frank is very upset because of everyone being hurt, but he doesn't care. He's just like, did you kill the target? So Frank walks up to him, punches him straight in the eye, and then everyone pulls Frank off of him. Billy then pushes everyone back. He talks to Frank. He's like, dude, if you're gonna attack him, that's only gonna be on you, okay? Guys like that, they don't get the blame for anything, okay? It's on you if this goes wrong. And then he's like, I'm leaving this place after this, okay? Once this mission is wrapped up, I am leaving, and so should you. And then we cut back to present day where Micro is like, maybe you should have just killed them, right? Because they just kind of killed your family afterwards. Bit of a shame, though. And also, we'll learn later on why Billy saved Orange, but that's for a later day. And also, Micro reveals that, yeah, well, the plan was kind of not really approved by Congress at all. Like, none of the stuff that you did when working for this Orange fellow, not Trump, was not on the books. It was all off the books. Congress didn't approve it. There are no records. You were basically hitman. That is what you were. Simple as that. And then Frank is like, all right, fine. I'll agree to work with you on one condition. They all die. And Micro's like, yeah, okay, sure. And I would have been like, yeah, I would have agreed too. Like, seriously, dude, of course. Like, that's the only way for him to get his life back. Yeah, I'll do it. And also, they're bad guys, so who cares? So yeah, they all die. So now we have a new partnership. Alright. Alright, we have one problem in this series right now, and that is the fact that we ain't got any guns. We need to resupply, so that is basically what this whole episode is about, isn't it? But we start off with Lewis making a bunker in his backyard, and later on in the episode, there's a little bit of a conversation that Curtis has with Lewis, where also he's kind of like, look, man, this bunker is kind of bad, though, because if it rains, you'll drown. Simple as that. You could make a great pool, though. Let's be honest here, but still, you'll drown. But Frank visits Turk for supplies because we need supplies. However, the thing is, the only thing Turk has is a pink gun with no ammo. So that's fun. Meanwhile, Homeland is expecting a set of illegal guns that they have seized. So you know where that's gonna go, right? Meanwhile, Rafi also tells her that she is off the Wolf case because that case went a level above her. So sadly enough, it is not for her anymore, especially because the fact that Wolf was dirty, and that is is gonna be very impactful to the homeland because of, you know, when a cop is dirty, what else was he dirty about? What cases was he dirty about? Everything will be thrown into jeopardy. Meanwhile, Sarah wants Frank to come by for some insurance stuff. So initially he doesn't do it, but then Micro's like, if you don't go to my wife, I will hold this mission hostage. So he goes over, and we learn that the son is having problems. We'll get more into that later on in the series, don't you worry about that. And also Frank fixes the sink with this girl, Leo. So that's fun. A little bit of a tomboy in the family. So then Lewis tries joining Anvil, and initially it goes fine. He's motivating one member of the team as well in order to be better. You know, he's doing a really good job, but then Curtis tells Billy, like, maybe you shouldn't have him, because he's kind of like a bomb, you know? Look, everything looks fine now. The pin is inside of the grenade. You don't have anything to worry about it. But one mission, the pin goes, bomb blows. I wouldn't want him having my 6. That's all I'll say. So then Billy's like, so you had a thing in your backyard, huh? Yeah, okay. That's a bit unstable. I'm cutting you from the team. And Lewis is immediately like, wait, that was Curtis, wasn't it? So that's gonna lead to some problems. But like I said, I still like his storyline a lot in this season. Even to all the way to the end. I think his storyline is done pretty well. So then, now that we're done with basically most of the episode, let us get to the guns. But first, we need some wheels in order to be able to take the guns. So we go to this location where apparently there was already a crime happening. Torture was already happening. Someone was already dead. So Frank just walks in. However, unlike Born Again, this time he actually has a plan, which technically that is the stupidest thing about Born Again. Frank goes in without a plan, which is dumb. But here he does. He has a plan. He's holding a grenade, pulls the pin. There you go. Shoot him, grenade blows. You might make it out, but you won't make it out without a scratch. So then Frank throws the grenade, he dodges, and then he kills everyone, and turns out the grenade was a dud, so that's good. And then Micro comes in, and Frank is like, take the van, I'm gonna take the car. Alright, and there's a little bit of a funny exchange, because Micro's like, Mustang, and Frank is like, always buy American. Okay, I guess this episode was sponsored by Mustang. Simple as that. So now we have the vehicles, well, we have the van for, you know, because Punisher needs a van, and we have a car in order to be able to intercept the guns. So now it's time for the plan. And the plan is simple. We're gonna hack the communications and instead play really loud music, and then also have a loop of the video feed of the truck, and then we're gonna steal the truck, and then we're gonna just get out, basically. Also get rid of the patrol car behind it. It's as simple as it can be, and everything works simply until Madani is like, look, I'm gonna go after it because it's a looped feed, okay? I'm gonna go, and that kind of caused some problems. So while we are driving out, everything seems fine, but then Madani shows up, so Frank goes in there with a bit of a Fast and the Furious chase, but you know, old Fast and Furious, not new Fast and Furious, but then also kind of TV budget, so not all the cool like camera angles, but we got some camera angle. However, at the end of the chase, Frank told Micro to leave, but Micro didn't listen, so he crashes into Madani. Then Frank is like, you idiot! And it's like, go home, go back to the base, I'll take care of Madani. So he pulls Madani from the car, and then she's like, Castle, and he's like, yep, that's me. Oh, no, like, give me that gun as well, an extra gun. Never say no to that one. She's like, did you kill Wolf? And he's like, yep, I did it because he was dirty. Simple as that. Couldn't make it any simpler even if I tried. So thank you for the gun. You're alive now. I'm gonna leave now. Okay, goodbye. And then the car explodes behind her and everything is fine. That's the end of the episode. It's simple when not a lot happens in the episode, but to be honest, it is all interesting, at least to me. I find it very interesting. I will say though that this season does have a bit of a slow pace. I feel like they could have sped up the pace a little bit faster though. You know, maybe this could have been episode 3 instead of episode 4 if we kind of sped it up. It's kind of like the slow-mo stuff from like Zack Snyder, but I'll probably talk about this also in my review. Anyway, onwards to episode 5. So, Micro's against Frank for saving Madani. He wasn't really happy about it. He didn't really feel like that was the right choice because now she knows that Frank's alive, even though maybe she was unconscious, maybe not, even though they had an actual direct conversation. So, she wasn't unconscious, but still, doesn't matter. Frank's alive, she knows it, which will put this whole operation in jeopardy. And then Frank is going to be the ultimate prick by saying, I'm gonna visit your wife. And he actually does. And he fixes the headlight of the car that he promised in the last episode that I didn't talk about, I don't think, but still he did that. And then also apparently the son stole a skateboard, at least maybe stole a skateboard, but he did. He stole that skateboard. We'll learn more about that later on because this skit is going to show us why fathers are needed in the home. because of the fact that, my goodness, does this kid suffer from extreme fatherless behavior. Then later on, we learned that Gunner actually was the one who made the video, because Micro's like, hey, who made the video, by the way? Because it had to be someone from your team. And it's like, well, it had to be Gunner. No one else but Gunner. And then Micro's like, he may know also who Orange is. You know, maybe we should go and ask him. Well, yeah, that might not be the smartest choice, but we'll get more into that more towards the end of the episode. Because of the fact, let us, as the audience, find out who Mr. Orange really is. And his name is William Rawlins, and he is at the top of the CIA. So that's gonna be a bit of a problem. And he also has some eye problems, at least one eye, thanks to Frank's fantastic punch. I mean, I like that in that episode where Frank just punches him and the dude just goes down. It's like, really? Wow, okay. One punch and he's like, oh god, my immediately panic attack. However, Madani is kind of going after Frank as well, and she questions Karen, who pretends not to know, obviously. And then later on, we have a little bit of a meetup between Frank and Karen. Always nice to see Karen in the Netflix shows, I will say that. And also, we learned that Rawlings apparently has listening devices inside of Madani's office, because when Madani and Stein were talking about something earlier on, about the fact that Stein had to go after a couple of people because they are part of this whole team, he apparently heard that. So that's fun. So I guess now his mission is also going to be, I'm going after Gunner myself as well. Why not? They can't bury me, okay? I gotta bury them first. Also, apparently the woman at the CIA is going to be appointed the head of the CIA, and she wants Rawlins to be up at the top with her, because she needs someone who works by the system and who she trusts. And I'm like, yeah, that ain't him though. That's not him. That's just not him. But she doesn't know that. But also, Karen wants to expose the bad guys, and the problem is they are too powerful. No matter what story Karen's going to write, it'll be buried and she'll be dead. Simple as that. That's how that story ends. Sometimes all you just need is a gun and a bullet, according to Punisher anyway, because some people are just too powerful to be exposed. So then the questioning happens at the homeland about the whole gun shipment, and Stein is actually going to cover for Madani, because earlier she told him about the fact that Frank is the one who saved her. But he does silence himself, and he gives her a week. So it's like, okay, so that's basically how long it's gonna take, either for the show to end or for one of the two of these people to die. So now then, it is time to go after Gunner. So Frank initially wants to go alone, but then Micro weasels his way in as well, and they go together over there. And then Micro is making some food for Frank, one of those emergency food things, gives it to Frank, and then afterwards he just pulls out a sandwich for himself, and Frank's like, where did you get that? It's like, I made it. You make one for me? No. I thought that was really funny. But anyway, we arrived at the location. Frank tells Micro to stay by the van, and also not to contact him unless he contacts Micro, which that's not really going to happen, but that's because of the fact that trouble is coming, but not yet. So Frank goes into the force. He gets to the building. He's like, ah, it's me, Frank. Don't worry about it. I'm unarmed. Don't worry about it. But then he takes an arrow in the shoulder, and before he can take another one, which first of all, he dodges another one, he's like, dude, I'm not with the bad guys, okay? The bad guys killed my family, okay? Because of the fact that you sent them the video, and they thought it was me, so they killed my family for it. So now everything is good between the two, but then a chopper sound happens. It's like, ah, okay, we have some company. And yes, we do. So a bunch of soldiers come into the forest under control of Rawlins, and now it is a fight to get out of there. And I love the way that how Gunner and Punisher work together in order to get everyone out. And even Micro has like a drone that he flies over in order to see and help Frank be able to take everyone out. It's like, okay, there's two people that are coming up on your sides, and then you got about 10 seconds before another set of people from the front will attack you. So they take out the two guys on the side and they run for it. It's great. However, sadly enough, Gunner did take too much damage, but they do take everyone out. But he dies from his wounds, sadly enough. And Frank falls down from his wounds as well, and then Micro grabs him and takes him away. Also, yeah, Rawlins now knows that Frank's alive. That's also a problem that we're gonna deal with, because that's funny. Earlier, the CIA woman is like, hey, you got any skeletons buried? And Rawlins is like, no. And now he sees Frank and he's like, oh no! I do have that. Also, Frank promised to be at the dinner from Sarah, and he missed it because he had to go for a Gunner, and also he got shot and he's bleeding out. And then Madani and Billy, they kind of hook up, and that is basically the episode. And I like the whole forest shootout thing. I like the way that they took everyone out, because obviously they are outgunned, but they're still able to take everyone out. Punisher coming in from like the leaves and then killing someone. Great stuff, great stuff. So now that Frank is badly hurt, he has a stream of both families celebrating, I think it was Thanksgiving together. One little problem though. Gunmen come inside of the house and kill the whole family, and we get the whole classic, no, wait, that sequence. We get that one. Finally, here it was. Episode 6 is where you get that scene. So if anyone wants to use that for their YouTube videos, they can. It is episode 6 of season 1. Simple as that. But Micro goes over to Curtis in order to ask him for help with Frank's case. So Curtis goes over and basically heals Frank by just cutting into his back, taking out the arrow, and just taking care of him, stapling him together. So Frank wakes up and Micro is like, look, I got Gunnar a grave, okay? I made sure that Gunnar was taken care of. And he's like, okay, thank you. And then at the Lieberman family's house, the mother officially now can confirm that the kid stole the skateboard. So she confronts him about it, and he goes over to his sister and punches her in the face because of the fact that this house is full of snitches and traitors. It's like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, okay, yeah. We have officially reached that stage of daddy issues. Gotcha. Alright. David, you need to come back home fast. But whatever. Anyway, we also hear on the radio the fact that Blackbird is looking for Raven, and we get the reveal of the fact that Raven is actually Frank Castle, and that Blackbird is Billy Russo. Meanwhile, Lewis pals around with the liberal hater. You remember him? His name is O'Connor, and they are basically handing something out because apparently someone who is being accused of something is innocent. Okay, sure. He brought a gun into the classroom, and I don't know what actually happened. That's all I remember from that part, so I don't know if he's actually innocent or not. But the cop then becomes a little bit rough with Lewis. He's like, are you reaching for my gun? I saw you reaching for my gun. You're under arrest, that kind of stuff. However, then Curtis later on bails him out and tells him the truth about O'Connor, and that is the fact that he never served. He never served in the military. Every story that he's telling is bull. Simple as that. So Lewis goes over to confront O'Connor about it, and then after a little bit of a fight, he dies because of the fact that he got a couple of stab wounds inside of him by Lewis. So that's that storyline kind of done, and I feel like right now Lewis has crossed that line of going into the insanity thing. So Madani calls over Russo, and she tells him that Frank is alive. He didn't know about that, so now he's gonna see if he can find Frank, and that's why he's been contacting everyone else. However, he goes over to Curtis first. However, Curtis can't tell him the truth because that is something that Frank should do. So he lies for him. Then he goes over to Frank. It's like, dude, really? I lied for you. It's like, oh, that's the choice that you made technically. And do whatever you want, okay? If you want to tell Billy I'm alive, do it. I don't necessarily care all that much. I'm leaving the choice up to you. So then after a little talk with Micro, Frank decides, yep, it's time to meet with Billy. So he goes to meet with Billy. They have a little bit of a fun talk, and he basically tells him the truth. He's like, look, man, okay? Orange, Schoonover, and that other guy, they were dirty. They were selling heroin inside of the bodies of children, okay? Despicable stuff. And Billy's like, look, let Madani handle this. She wants to. And Frank is like, no, I gotta see this through myself. And then he's like, look, man, you gotta put all this stuff behind you. Look, I can give you a job at Anvil, okay? I can make sure that you're taken care of. I can get you out of the city if you want, okay? I will help you. And Frank is like, yeah, no, because Frank has to see this kind of stuff through. However, Billy's like, if you change your mind, this is the location, meet me there tonight. So instead of doing that, he goes over to Sarah in order to apologize for not being at the dinner, and then they basically have a little bit of a talk about the kids, and Frank is like, don't worry about it, it's all gonna be fine in the future, don't you worry about that one, everything is going to be fine. And then we see Billy waiting at the pier for Frank, but Frank doesn't show up, so he goes into a car, and who's sitting next to him? But it's good old Rawlings. So yeah, Billy's evil, baby. Who could have seen that one coming? Alright, so episode 7 starts off with an awkward talk between Lewis and his dad, and then later on in the episode there's another awkward talk, and then Lewis goes over to the store, buys some stuff, and he's apparently building something that's going to be more important later on. But there you go, that's the Lewis storyline of this episode. And also beforehand, Lewis had an episode, if you know what I mean. Watch the show to know what I mean. But why are you here if you didn't watch the show? But I can't really say it because I don't know how YouTube's going to react to me talking about it like this, so I'm just gonna call it an episode. And that is the Lewis stuff for this episode, so let's go over to the main stuff. So it's time to go after Bennett, knock him off the list. However, not entirely, because first we need him in order to be able to either tell us who Mr. Orange is or take us to him ourselves. Also, Russo lies to Madani about Frank. He's like, sorry, didn't turn up any leads, when it's like, you two talked. But whatever, hey, that's how it works. And also in this episode, Madani does find the listening device because Billy does does make a little bit of a comment about it. It's like, but don't worry about it, okay? No one's listening. And then she's like, what if there's a listening device in my office? Because after I talked about Gunner, he died. So maybe it's a listening device in my office. So she scans around with Stein, and yes, there is a listening device in her office. So Billy kind of screwed the pooch right there. Simple as that. Can't make it any more simpler than that. So Billy goes over to Rawlings and they have a bit of a conversation, and basically the gist of the conversation is the fact that we learn that Billy was already dirty before the war stuff in that sense. You know, he was dirty before Frank punched Rawlings in the eye. Already before that, he was already dirty. So yeah, the Billy is not a good guy. He's just not a good guy. We don't know how long he's been dirty, but he's been dirty for a while, okay? He's been dirty for a long time. So, time to go after Bennett. However, he is in a military base, so Frank has a little bit of an issue with it, because what if he goes in there and he encounters another soldier? Is he supposed to kill the soldier or not? Because, like, these are not bad people. I mean, Bennett is, but, like, the US military isn't bad, okay? They're just following orders, simple as that. So, he has to kind of deal with that maybe later, so just try to be as stealthy as possible. So, Frank infiltrates the place. Meanwhile, Bennett has a date with a woman, and that turns very spicy. And also, I wrote it here, it's the best way that I thought to describe this situation, but Bennett likes to be humiliated. That is the best way that I could put it, because at the start of it, the woman pours her glass on the floor and she's like, lick it up, and from there we continue on. So yeah. He's like that. He's a freak. So Frank makes it into the base very stealthily. He gets up to Bennett, and then the woman yells out, he's here! So turns out this was all a trap to capture the Punisher. But the thing is, Frank doesn't necessarily need Bennett. He just needs to stay in that room for 3 minutes because of the fact that we're hacking the phone so that we can track his location wherever he goes, and so that he can lead us to the main bad guy. So Frank starts punching him a little bit, and then Micro's like, Frank, there's incoming. So Frank grabs a couple of smoke grenades, drops them, and there we go. Let the stealth begin. So Frank takes everyone out. He doesn't kill any of them, I don't think. Maybe one of them dies, but still, he takes all of them out. Maybe they all die. I actually don't really remember. During this part, I was kind of playing a wee bit of Mario Kart. I will admit that I was playing a little bit of Mario Kart, but it was really cool seeing Frank just take everyone out. However, on a bonus thing, I did unlock all of the cards, so that's a fun thing. Not in the Let's Play that I did over on the Let's Play channel, but that's neither here nor there. But like, I did unlock all of the cards, so that is at least a W for me. But he takes everyone out, and then he escapes after the time is up. However, he encounters a soldier, so sadly enough, he has to shoot the soldier, but I don't think he dies. I mean, he did get shot, but I don't think it's gonna be a fatal wound, but who knows, maybe he's gonna die. Castle doesn't stay around to find out long enough. I mean, Castle did try to talk him down. It's like, don't do this stuff, okay? Simple as that. Don't do it, just let me go. And then when he didn't, Castle shot. So he goes back to the van, gets in there, and then Bennett heads over to where Rawlings is. So we follow him over there. So now we have Rawlings' location, and Bennett is like, are you kidding me? What happened? And also, this was all a trap, wasn't it? All of this was a trap because this team was way too fast. And also the woman said, he's here! So this was all a trap, wasn't it? And then Rawlings is like, alright, Bennett, you've earned yourself your retirement. Okay, we're gonna give you retirement. Billy, take him to the location. So Billy takes him to a motel room where he's gonna stay before he gets the money. However, Billy kills him, and he also apparently killed the woman as well, so that's fun. But he kills Bennett, so that's done. And then Frank has the perfect shot at the orange man, and he takes it. But turns out it's bulletproof glass. The one thing he didn't think about. So even though we could have called it right there, the bulletproof glass kind of made this a little bit more difficult, and also will extend the series by a little bit. So we were so close, but that's because the fact that Castle doesn't know that Billy is bad. It was almost over. So at the start of this episode, we learned that Billy has some mommy issues, apparently. Apparently, Billy's mom abandoned him to an orphanage, and he's got some scars about that one, and he's kind of torturing his own mother because of it. So that's fun, you know. It's a very normal thing to do. Seems like a normal fellow. Just because he has a handsome face does not mean that he is all right in the head. And since the encounter with Rawlings, now we have officially a name for the guy. At least Frank does. Frank finally officially has a name for Rawlings, so there you go. And now they learn who they're up against, which causes a little bit more problems problems because of who he is. Also, we learned that Billy was abused when he was a kid, and I mean that in the most literal sense and also in the SA kind of sense, by an older man at the orphanage. We'll deal more with that, I think, in the next season, actually. That is not something that we really deal with in this season, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I was abused, so now I have a reason to be evil. It's like, yeah, of course you do. Just because you were abused does not give you the right to be a prick to everyone else. Simple as that. Also, there seems to be trouble at the family house because of the fact that the cameras are down, so Frank goes to investigate. He also brought some flowers to apologize, and it turns out everything is fine at the house. And then he and the wife kind of get to talking, and Sarah kisses Frank, and it's like, oh boy, but don't be too mad about that one, my boy Micro, because he brought some leftovers from your wife. So that's fine, you know. I mean, obviously he's a bit drunk about that and he's angry about it, but how can you blame him? Alright, oh, by the way, he didn't kiss your wife. He says that, you kissed my wife. It's like, no, she kissed him. Big difference. And also, I mean, she was drunk. And it's better to have happened with a loyal guy like Frank than an actual person who would have taken advantage of the situation and of her. Let's be honest here. This could have gone a lot worse. Frank felt the kiss and he pushed her away. However, a worse guy might have actually taken advantage of that situation. So it's better that it happened with Frank. It was just a little kiss on the lips and that was it. Let's be honest here. I don't think there was any tongue action involved. So Micro, just think about it. Could have been a lot worse. Also, at Homeland Security, Madani has a plan in order to capture Castle, because apparently Castle's gonna be buying some stuff, which is like, wait, what? Wait, what? No, he's not. This is already BS. I think actually what she's trying to do is she's trying to kind of like see who's on the other side of that listening in device. It's probably a trap. But Rawlings is listening in and he sends Russo out. But Russo's like, look, I'm not gonna do this stuff because you already killed most of my guys, okay? I'm not dealing with this crap, okay? I need to get some outsourced guys. They're gonna be really expensive to do. And he's like, I don't care. Hey, make sure Castle dies. That's all I need. So, Madani puts the fake plan that they have into the computer about how everything is gonna go down, and she tells the officers the real plan, I guess, and the plan is gonna be put into the computer because of the fact that if they are listening in on devices, they might also have hacked the computer, so it's better to just put in a fake plan. So it is really all about getting the people behind the microphone out in the open. Simple plan, right? But let's hope everything goes right, because otherwise, oh boy, it's gonna be going horribly wrong. By the way, this episode, Frank doesn't really do a whole lot because this is more about Madani versus Russo, kind of in that sense. So Frank and Micro, they get a bit drunk, they talk, they have some fun with each other. I very much enjoyed the scene, but then Micro gets a little bit too drunk and he's like, you know what, we should bring Madani in on this stuff. Alright, I can have my wife again, everything can be peachy and fine, she'll arrest Rawlings, simple. Frank is like, he dies. We're not bringing him in. He dies. Simple as that. So then the next day when he is sobered up, he still says the same thing. And it's like, oh boy, he really wants to bring Madani into this, but he can't do that. So Frank knocks him out. And then afterwards, he gets a call from his wife. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, great. Apparently there's a problem. So he goes to investigate and turns out that the son had a knife. And so now Frank has to discipline the boy. And he does it in the most Punisher fashion that he can. But Billy gets a new crew in, and they are people of trouble, not necessarily trustworthy, but trustworthy enough to get paid. So Frank talks to the boy. He doesn't really get through to him until he takes the knife, puts it to his neck. It's like, you feel like a tough guy now, huh? And obviously at this point, Micro's like, no, my boy. But it's like, no, let Frank do this. This is good. This is what the boy needs, all right? Sometimes you need to scare the little kids a bit, all right? Just a little bit, not too much. But then the boy reveals the truth, and that is the fact that he's lost a lot of friends because of what happened with his dad, and also he wants them to feel the pain that he feels every single day. So yeah, it's a simple tale, and it's a good thing that Frank did what he did because now he can stop it. So afterwards they go outside, they play a little bit of catch with a ball, which is not necessarily round, but it's the other ball. I don't know what it's called in English, my apologies, people. Meanwhile, Homeland is ready for the ambush, and Anvil comes in. I'm just gonna call them Anvil, and there's a big shootout, and everyone dies, basically. I think everyone dies except Billy Russo. So then Stein goes after him with Madani a little bit further behind. Stein catches up to him. He gets him down, takes off his mask, sees that it's Billy, gets a bit shocked, and that is when Billy takes the opportunity to reveal that he was kicked out of the Assassins, because he reveals his hidden blade and stabs Stein, and so Stein dies. But it's like, dude, he used the hidden blade. Oh my god, did they pay Ubisoft in order to allow this or something like that? But yeah, he stabs her with the hidden blade, and then afterwards goes away, and then Madani's like, no, my partner, why? And then later on, she gets cleaned by Russo, the guy who killed him. Wow, what are the odds? She instantly went back into his arms. And also, Micro almost reveals himself to his son, but Frank is able to stop him from being an idiot like that. He's like, alright, boy, go long. Throws the ball really far. He's like, what are you doing, huh? If you reveal yourself to your son right now, they're all gonna die. Go back home. No, go back home. I got this situation. Don't worry about it. Go back home. And I do like the inclusion of Lieberman's family because of the fact it really adds more to Frank and Micro. I very much am a fan of that. And that is basically how the episode ends. Alright, things are about to go down, but first let us start at the beginning of the episode. So, Madani is dealing with the death of her partner, and Frank is kind of spying on her to see if she can be trusted, because I guess he's kind of, you know, he's kind of agreed, potentially, to the whole bringing Madani in. He hasn't fully agreed. He's like 45% in. However, then explosions are happening because, right, we have to deal with the Lewis subplot from this season, which is this episode and I think the next episode. But yeah, Lewis blew up a bunch of buildings, a bunch of like cop offices, and he then sends a letter to Karen Page, and he's like, yeah, hey, you've talked for people like me before, and I'm like, oh, he's talking about Punisher. So he's kind of like the new Punisher, I guess. So I hope he'll do it again. So she makes a response basically saying no, and then afterwards she goes on to the radio, and she also says no, and then Lewis calls the radio. By the way, Frank is not happy about any of this, because also there was a guy there who is anti-gun, and he's like, hey Karen, you agree with me, right, that people shouldn't have guns? And Frank was like, you're barking up the wrong tree there, boy, because she has a gun. And to be honest, they could have easily gone the route of like being a woman alone. But no, they don't do it. It's just, have you ever felt unsafe? Because a gun makes you feel very safe. She kind of goes in that direction. However, then she starts to talk to Lewis a bit, and Frank is like, calm it down. And I'm like, you're barking up the wrong tree there, because if you know Karen Page, she doesn't do that kind of stuff. However, then the bomber says something, and Frank is like, wait, I heard that before at Curtis's place. He asks Micro to search up who it is, so Micro reluctantly agrees, and he looks up, eventually finds who it is, and tells the location to Frank, and Frank goes out there, because now he has to deal with that stuff. And he's like, I'm just gonna kill him, even though Micro's like, let's just call the cops, you know, or call Curtis, who also went over to O'Connor's place, because apparently, I think he actually went to Lewis's place first, but he wasn't there, so he went to O'Connor's, and he finds the dead body of O'Connor's, and then he fights Lewis, but he gets beaten up with his own leg and gets tied up. So Curtis is kind of out of the picture for this one. So Frank goes to Lewis's place. Meanwhile, the anti-gun guy, whose name I do not remember and could not care less about, because he's just a side character that I don't really care about necessarily. He's just there for, I don't know, plot. But anyway, he hires Russo's company Anvil as protection, which is kind of funny. The anti-gun guy hires the gun guys in order to protect him. Of course, it's always like that. It's always going to be like that, okay? You're very anti-gun until your life gets threatened, and then you are pro-gun as much as it can be. So Frank gets to Lewis's house. He waits outside for a long time, doesn't get anything, but then Micro gets the location of the cell phone and also Curtis's cell phone, so Frank gets over there. However, he's also being very ominous about the whole thing, where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Madani, basically. That's basically what he's going to do. He's going to Madani, but he's not telling Frank, but he's kind of telling Frank. He's kind of being ominous about it. So Frank gets there. He sees that Lewis put a bomb on Curtis, and when he gets by the window, Lewis calls him, and he's like, yo, dude, just give yourself up, okay? Just let me disarm the bomb and give yourself up, okay? Curtis is a good guy. Then he tells the story about how good of a guy he is. Also, yes, this is a Punisher wannabe, so that's fun. But also, Frank hates bombs, which I actually love that. He's just like, I hate bombs. Cowards. But after a long talk, eventually he has to meet him in the back alley, or at least by the window while Lewis is in the back alley. And they talk a little bit more about it, and eventually Frank does get him to tell him which wire to cut. So he cuts that wire. However, the cops are here, so it's a bit too late. So he cuts the wire, runs outside, runs really far away, but the cops keep catching up to him because he's running and they are in a car. So then he fights the cops, steals a cop car in order to drive away, ditches it somewhere, and then he runs away. The problem is, when he was sliding across the hood of the car, that car has a camera on it. So now the world knows that Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, is alive, which I actually found kind of funny in my own head. I mean, I tried to make it funny, and as the fact everyone's like, oh, Frank Castle's back, and I'm like, oh, what do you mean, you racist bastard? that is Pete Castiglione. He looks nothing like Frank Castle. Also, Micro goes to Madani, tells her about Rollins, and then obviously the news comes up, and that kind of interrupts everything. But yeah, the world knows that Punisher has returned from the dead, or maybe he was never dead to begin with. So this episode is very interesting because it takes place after the episode, but also during the episode, which is actually kind of fun. Because we start the episode where Lewis shoots an anvil guy, and then birds won't escape the cage, and he takes the dude's clothes, and then afterwards we cut to at the end of the episode, basically, where Brett Mahoney, you remember him from Daredevil? Yeah, he's here interviewing people because of the fact that it kind of looks like Punisher and Lewis together tried to kill the anti-gun guy, whose name is Ori, which obviously isn't the case, but still. And then we keep cutting back and forth between different characters, you know. Billy and Brett have a fun interaction where Brett's like, yeah, maybe you people are just incompetent. It's like, yeah, because you're much better than us. You know, that kind of stuff. We have the fact that the senator is like, yeah, hey, Punisher, and like they both tried to kill me. And also, I was a hero, even though he kind of ran away like a coward and left Karen alone. But, and then Karen is like, that's not even true. What happened, okay? But what happened is this. Basically, Lewis took the guy's clothing. He went upstairs. He shot the guy at the front door. Went inside and Castle stopped him. That's what happened. And that's actually what happened. Because we also cut to another scene where Castle calls up Billy and he's like, hey, Lewis is coming for the senator. So protect him. Get him out of there. Okay, simple as that. I'll stop him. Like, oh, you're here. Okay. Look, Frank, I can help you. Also, this episode, we get the truth revealed. So that's going to be a bit of a problem for Frank later on. But basically, Karen was here because she was gonna interview the senator, and she actually does that, and he asks her point blank, like, why do you need a gun? And she's like, for protection, for my safety. And he's like, society could provide it. And I'm like, oh, it would have been so easy to go down that route, but they didn't. I respect the fact that they did not go that route specifically, and they just said that it's because of the fact that she needs safety like everyone else needs safety. In that sense, it's not just like because of the fact that you know, she's a woman. They didn't really play that card. However, she doesn't answer him, because when he's like, society should provide that, she instantly looks at his guards and is like, really? Shouldn't society also provide your protection then, good sir? Because like, you got a bunch of army guys here, so what's this all about? Like, aren't you a bit hypocritical right now? You're talking about me with a gun, but then also you have other people with a gun. So, it's basically the same thing. I thought that was funny. But basically, Frank Castle makes his way upstairs while Lewis is doing his thing. Lewis blows open the door. He kills a couple of people, beats up the senator guy. And then when he's ready to shoot him, Carol jumps in and is like, hey, don't kill him. Please, just leave. And then right as he is about to shoot, Castle jumps in front of the bullet, tanks it, I guess, with his thing. The senator runs away, and Lewis grabs Karen, and he has a bomb now. So that's another problem that we have to deal with. So basically, he gets away. He gets down to the basement area of the hotel. Very nice. Castle has to escape. He does that stuff. However, he gets stopped because Madani is also here, because of the fact that she finally went back into the office, and there she had an encounter with Rafi, where she's like, hey, look, my office has been bugged. That's why I did it. I needed to kind of draw those people out. And then she gets the files on the people that were killed there, the other side people, and it's like, oh, hey, look what they all have in common. At some point, they worked for Anvil. So time to go and ask my boyfriend about this, and that's why she was at the hotel. She asks him about it, and he's being really sus about it. He's like, well, I mean, yeah, they used to work for me, but also, you know, they've taken a bunch of other jobs. Like, well, it's very suspicious that it's you. And she kind of starts to kind of piece things together, but her brain isn't really lighting up yet. We'll get to that later on. But she's like, all right, please find the fifth guy for me. And he's like, I'll do it. But she is a little bit sus of him. Also, in modern day, to Brett, she's like, yeah, I don't think Castle did this, because if Castle wanted him dead, he'd be dead. That's how Castle works. But Castle didn't want him dead. Castle didn't do any of this stuff. Castle doesn't use bombs. And then Brett's like, yeah, but he's insane. It's like, yeah, but it's not Castle's way, okay? Simple as that. So she is starting to believe that Castle is innocent in this whole thing. So that's nice. So Castle goes down the stairs. Madani goes up. Madani has him in her sights. He's like, all right, shoot me if you want. However, someone else shoots him. And that is good old Billy. And then Billy and Madani have an argument. And Castle's like, Bill, what have you done? Not out loud. He talks that to himself. But this is when Madani also realizes you're the one that killed Stein. So then everyone gets arrested except for the fact that Castle's able to make his escape. He takes out a couple of people, grabs the fire hose, and just jumps down the stairwell through the middle. And he's able to escape, get down to the bottom floor. And now we have Lewis, who is inside of the kitchen. And he's like, what do we do? What do I do now? Like a good soldier waits and stuff like that. And then Castle just breaks into the place. And he's like, okay, hey, you and me, okay? We are kind of alike. Okay, fine. You and me. Let her go. It's just gonna be you and me. We'll blow up together. Don't you worry about it. Just let her go. Alright? But he doesn't really want to do that. And Karen is kind of like feeling the wires in order for Castle to just kind of be like, yep, that's the one kind of thing. Until she grabs the white wire and he does it. And then she pulls the wire, shoots Lewis in the foot. And I'm like, wait, how did you shoot him in the foot? Because that doesn't necessarily make sense. Because wasn't your gun taken at the beginning of the episode? And when Lewis was attacking, you didn't have your gun. How did you get your gun back? Like that is just a thing where I'm like, how did that happen? Because like after the senator, maybe she grabbed the gun, put it in her purse. Maybe that's what happened. Who knows? You know, maybe I blinked at that point. But afterwards, he goes into the cooler and then he reattaches the wire. And I'm just gonna say, Lewis blows. There you go. And afterwards, Frank uses Karen as an escape, as a quote-unquote hostage. They get into the elevator. Frank stops the elevator as it's going either up or down, doesn't really matter. He climbs out of the elevator and then he escapes from the building. And that's where the episode ends. And I very much enjoyed this whole like going back and forth to figure out the truth of what happened, even though technically we already know kind of part of the truth, because like, oh yeah, Castle working with Lewis. Like, no he didn't. No he didn't. Simple as that. No he didn't. But now Castle knows that Billy is involved with the death of his family. At least that he knows that Billy's against him. I don't really know if he's fully figured out that Billy was part of his family's death, but he has figured out that Billy's evil, so I can't wait to see how that goes. 3 more episodes to go. Alright, so after that whole hotel situation, Frank is now with the homeless, kind of thinking about Billy and everything that has happened between him and Billy and everything else. And Billy is on the TV talking bad about Frank. But Frank does make it home back to Micro, and he is not happy. He is ready to stitch himself up, and eventually we get the reason why he's mad. And that is, you talked to Madani without my permission. Like, I said no, and you still went there. And now Frank is gonna do everything to kill Billy Russo. That's it. That's his focus right now. Meanwhile, Madani brings Russo in, and she questions Russo about it, and also kind of like gets a bit angry with him, which Rafi will not like, because he later on gets a bit mad about that with her. But whatever, you know what? She had to shake the tree and see what falls out. But now they're gonna work together, so that's nice. And also, she literally just says Rollins to Russo. She's like, hey, give me Rollins. And he has that shocked face a little bit. It's like, oh, you didn't know I had him, did you? Wow, you didn't know I knew about him. Great. Meanwhile, Rollins tells the CIA woman that Castle's a problem, and that basically Rollins did a bunch of illegal stuff, and that Castle was also a part of that illegal stuff. And then the CIA woman is like, what? I asked you about skeletons, and you said no. No skeletons. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, but when you asked him and he said no, afterwards it was revealed that Castle was still alive. So that's like when the official public reveal came that he was still alive. So Castle, before he goes after Russo, he spray paints the body armor once again. The Punisher's back, baby. He's fully back. Fantastic. And also Micro's family, they're kind of a little bit winded about the fact that it's like that is not Pete Castiglione, but instead it's Frank Castle. And the son gets really upset about that. He takes his phone upstairs. Apparently he called the tip line about the Castle. So a cop comes in and he's a bit suspicious about everything. Yeah, she basically is like, oh no, my daughter's over at a sleepover and I think you should leave. And then he's like, you're coming with me. And then a little fight happens, but then the partner comes in and is like, you're coming with us. So Sarah and the son get taken, sadly enough, but Leo was able to escape, and that is good. So then Micro tells Frank, like, what about my family? You know, what about them? Okay, you can go after Russo, but what about them? And then Frank looks at the camera, is like, something is wrong. Rewind. And then they see what happened, and then Micro is ready to go in there to go after them, to save them. And Frank is like, no, wait. He calls Leo, and he's like, after this phone call, throw the battery one way, throw the SIM card another way, and hide at this location. And then he'll come pick her up. He's not gonna do that, though. He's gonna send Micro instead. He tells him, you're gonna go for your daughter. I'm gonna wait here for the bad guys. Alright? So now Rollins and Russo also know, because of the family, that Micro's alive. And he's like, yeah, but Wolf told me that, you know, he was dead. And I believed him on that. Why would he not? Why would he lie about that? Also, the CIA woman gets called into Homeland, but she won't really help Madani necessarily. She's a bit rattled by this whole thing. So she leaves, and then Madani's like, what a woman. What a piece of work. So Frank decides to prepare. He makes a bunch of bullets. He hides a bunch of guns everywhere, ready to take on the bad guys. Places a bunch of bombs everywhere, just to be able to surprise attack everyone. Now we just wait for the baddies to come. Because of the fact that they can track the phone, because Sarah has the number. So now that they can track the phone, they know where he is. So Billy sends a bunch of his guys over there. Meanwhile, Micro goes for his daughter, and he's like, hey, it's me, honey, I'm alive. Yes, I'm alive. Now we need to go to this location and wait for Frank until midnight. And if he's not there, we're gonna go to Madani. That was the plan. So Frank waits, and then the boys come in, and Frank stealth takedowns a bunch of the guys, stealth kills a bunch of guys until they are at the main location. And one guy calls Russo and is like, sir, yes, we're here. Seems like he ain't here. Also, there's a timer going off and some kind of a torture video is showing. And then it's like, how did you get the location? Well, we found the phone. Okay, he's here. Okay, he's here. And then the head gets thrown, blows up, and we have a big old shootout. And when the dust settles after an explosion, Frank takes care of almost everyone else. He's like, Russo! But Russo ain't here. He takes the mask off of one of the guys, not Russo, kills him. He also cut someone in the legs. So he's like, all right, you are gonna tell me where Russo is. I don't know, okay? I don't know! Alright, where's the family? Well, that's on a need-to-know basis, and I also don't know that. Please believe me. Okay, shoots him in the head. Takes his phone, calls up Russo, and Russo's like, okay, fine. I'll let the family go if I can get you and Micro. Simple as that. Meanwhile, Rollins and the CIA woman have a bit of a conversation with each other about everything that has happened. And he's like, let's blame everything on Billy Russo, okay? And she's like, okay, fine. You know what? We'll do that, but only if you also resign from your post. Because I can't have you in the CIA. Because everything that has been built, all the connections, they will all disappear. All the good stuff that has been built will crumble because of the bad stuff that he's done if he gets known. And he reluctantly agrees because he has no other choice, because otherwise he's gonna hand him over to Homeland. It's either that or he gets handed over. Simple as that. So then it's midnight, and the good old Pete still isn't here until Madani comes by the window, and then Frank is like, I called her. And everyone's surprised, understandable. But before Frank can say anything, he goes over to the girl, and he's like, yeah, my real name's Frank Castle, but you did good, kid. You did really good. Everything you did was good. So now the team is formed. We got Micro, Madani, and Frank all together, and we got 2 more episodes to go before this ends. Alright, so Madani interviews Frank and Micro, and Frank basically gives all the information. He's like, yeah, okay, we were under the orders of these people. Rollins was the one who was truly in charge. Oh, and I was the one who shot Zubair. I was the one who pulled that trigger. Fun, right? Yeah, okay, cool. That was not something she was expecting, that's for sure. She was like, did Billy do it? He's like, nah, I did. I killed Zubair. I was the one who shot him. So now it is time for the trading. And Homeland appears. And then a shootout happens, but the bad guys still get to take Frank, and Micro gets fake shot in the back. Yes, it's a fake. I'm just gonna give it to you guys as clean as I can. It is a fake shot. It's one of those like blood packs, but that was all part of the plan. So Frank gets taken to where Micro and Frank have been hiding out for a while now. And we also get the reveal that Billy knew of the plan of the attack on Frank and his family, but he personally wasn't there. He wasn't really okay with it, but he also did nothing to help Frank. So Frank is still like, you are going to die, good sir. Also, at Homeland, we have a family reunited, and the wife is, you know, understandably upset. I mean, at this moment, Micro has now let his family believe that he was dead twice. I mean, okay, after the coast was clear, Madani told the family that he was okay, but still, he did it twice now. What a guy, okay? It's just, okay, they are gonna need so much therapy. But who cares? The family's back together, and that's good. I also like one line that the wife says later on in the episode, because, like, you know, Frank wants to have a chance to kill these guys, and she's like, good, I hope he does. I hope he sends them to hell. And I'm like, wow, okay. You really married out of your league. Let's be honest here. That is, my goodness, what a woman. So then later on, Rollins appears in front of Frank, and Frank makes a bunch of jokes, which I actually like. Frank is just like, haha, the dog needs to back off, because the owner's here now. Right, Billy? Why don't you go and bark a little bit or go play fetch for a while you know, the boss is here. So Rollins then starts beating Frank, but they still need Frank. Also, Billy earlier revealed that, sadly enough, Micro is dead, which he's not, but still, Frank now thinks that he may be dead. But Rollins beats Frank because of the fact that he's got a bit of a score to settle, because it's funny how he keeps punching Frank, yet Frank with one punch was able to do more damage to him than he does to Frank. Also, we get the big reveal that Frank being taken was part of the plan so that we could track them to the location and arrest them. Problem is, Frank took off the tracker. That was what he was playing with before the exchange. But that was part of Frank's plan. Frank wanted a chance at these pricks. Simple as that. So after being beaten up and bloody as hell, he's like, alright, Billy, alright, I'll shut it off, but you gotta do it. You gotta be the one to kill me. You gotta be the one to do it, okay? Bill, please do it. So he gets freed, but the gun under the desk was taken, sadly enough. So he inputs the code, does the retinal scan, and the timer shuts off. But what they don't know is that something even worse is happening right now. But there's a knife stuck to the chair hidden. Frank is prepared for everything. He grabs the knife and he stabs Rollins and bites him for some reason. However, Billy is able to get him off of Rollins, and then we get the reveal of what Frank actually did, and that is he turned on the cameras and sent a feed directly to Homeland, at least to Madani. So Rollins beats up Frank a little bit more, goes actually kind of insane, which I actually like that he actually went insane. And then we get the reveal that Rollins couldn't care less about Billy, and that if need be, Rollins will throw Billy under the bus. Simple as that. Which doesn't really make Billy all that happy. So Billy, he cuts a piece off of the ties that bind the arms of Punisher. Which is like, why would he do that? I mean, yes, he wants Punisher to kill Rollins, but why? Why would he do this kind of stupid stuff? Like, you know Punisher's also gonna come after you, right? Like, I guess he wants Frank to kill Rollins so that afterwards he can kill Frank and everything is safe. But Frank has a little bit of a moment with himself, whether he goes to the afterlife with his wife or whether he stays alive. However, an adrenaline shot kind of causes him to make that choice, and he frees himself and he starts going down on Rollins like Kratos went down on Poseidon, just like that. Beats him up a couple of times. He doesn't throw him from place to place because, to be honest, he can't, you know, it's not a video game, but he punches him, beats him up, and then puts his thumbs in his eyes, and that's where I was like, oh hey, that's Poseidon, and kills him. And then Billy's like, man, I love to watch you work, and I'm like, so do I. However, at this point also, Micro goes to Madani, and he's like, let me get your computer, and he basically logs into her account. It's like, oh, you know my password? It's like, yep, and you're gonna be happy that I do, because here you go, here's the videos. These are all live videos, all right? And now that you have your evidence, let's go and get Frank potentially alive, because of the fact that, let's be honest here, Micro owes Frank. Simple as that. But then Frank reveals the truth to Billy, and he's like, there's a bunch of cameras here, and before Billy can kill Frank, Homeland comes in, and I'm just gonna say Madani shoots Billy in the arm, because Billy gets shot in the arm, but I'm gonna say it was Madani. But yeah, anyway, Billy escapes, the bad guys die, and Frank is officially alive, and he does not get to spend the afterlife potentially with his wife, or at least it kind of looks like his wife is gone, so welcome home, Frank. Welcome home. But Billy, sadly enough, escaped because of the fact that we need 13 episodes of this stuff. It could have ended right here, but we need another episode. So let's get to that one. The big finale, boys. So it's finale time, boys. So with Punisher in critical condition, Madani takes him to her dad in order to fix him up, because obviously at the end of last episode, there was no hospitals. Not allowed. Meanwhile, Billy's packing, and he takes out the vets that can arrive at his house. And then Frank wakes up. He is kind of fine. He's still a little bit hurt, but he's better than he was before. And Micro gives Frank money that he stole from the bad guys. And Frank's first reaction is like, you had us living in that place when you could have given us a better hideout. But that doesn't necessarily matter, because Frank still wants to go after Billy. Obvious reasons being obvious. So Billy goes to Curtis later on, and he's not there to kill him. He just wants to know where Frank is. And also, Billy feels no remorse for anything that happened in Afghanistan. No remorse at all. He's like, who cares, dude? They kill each other all the time. Or what about the drugs? Who cares about that, you know? I mean, if we weren't the ones to do it, other people would have done it. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, that makes things right. Good. Anyway, this was all a trap, by the way, for Billy. Because when Kurt hands him his coffee? Billy notices something is wrong, and he immediately turns and dodges, and the sniper shot goes through the window. Because yes, it was all a trap. However, Billy does get a good shot off at Kurt, and then Frank calls Kurt, and Kurt is kind of like, yeah, I'm a bit bleeding out, but oh no, other than that, I'm pretty fine. And he's like, all right, I want to talk to him. Hey, all right, if I give you this phone, you're not gonna shoot me, right? Okay, here's the phone. So they have a little conversation. Frank is like, all right, look, I'll allow you to escape if you let Kurt go, in that sense. You know, you allow you to escape, but don't hurt Kurt. Simple as that. And he's like, okay, only if I hear the bullet come out of the gun and the magazine drop. So he does that. Billy gets up, gives Kurt the phone, and then walks off. But they did set a time and for the final showdown. That being tonight at the park where it all began, where basically Frank died and the Punisher was born. Basically where his family died. So before we get there, let's have a little bit of a flashback with Billy and Frank's family in the park. Let's have a little flashback about that, right? I mean, I kind of wish we had some more of this throughout the season. Maybe we could have sped up the season a little bit more and added some more of these scenes in between of like flashbacks outside of the military with Frank and Billy. But whatever, it is what it is. It was still a nice sequence. But before it's midnight, Billy goes to the park and he takes a couple of hostages. He ties them to the carousel and waits for Frank to arrive. So Frank comes in from the forest of the park, I guess, and he gets in there. He's like looking through the scope in order to see where he is. No one's there. All right, then Billy turns on the lights and he calls Frank. He's like, you're out there, aren't you? Well, I got 2 hostages and they're bleeding out, so you better hurry. Meanwhile, Madani somehow gets the location where Frank Castle is at that moment, and I'm like, okay, did he send that to her, or did she, like, because she kind of seemed surprised, but did she put like a tracker on him? Like, what is this? But then she decides to, you know, pick up her stuff and go after them as well, because she still wants revenge for Russo as well. She wants to kill him. So Frank throws a couple of bombs, I guess, on the other side of the park, or at least he allows a couple of explosions to happen on one side of the park, and then he comes in from the other side, and we got a bit of a shootout until we eventually jump into the carousel, where we got a little bit of a shootout as well. Frank gets shot a couple of times, but he hits Billy right in the cheek, which I actually find funny, because Billy gets hit in the cheek. He's like, oh, it hurts so much. Takes out the bullet, and then afterwards he just stops the carousel. He's like, enough. It's like, wow, dude, you got shot once. You shot Frank like 5 times. He's not crying. Why are you crying? He's like, okay, enough. All right, you come out, you throw everything away, or I'll kill the hostages. Because I feel like he knows that he's not going to be able to beat Frank. Yes, both Frank and Billy were the best of the best of the best. But Frank, I think, is slightly better. So Frank does it. He throws away his gun, takes his knife, throws it away as well. And then right as he is about to be killed, Madani takes the shot because she pops up. And then one of the hostages is like, oh, help us, lady. And then that obviously caused Billy to be distracted, and he shoots Madani dead. Don't worry, she's not dead. We need her for season 2, remember? But that gives Frank the perfect opening in order to rush Billy and punch him. And then we have a little bit of a fisticuff fight. We have a disarming knife fight, and also Frank gets stabbed by the hidden blade, which is actually under his arms. Like, look, okay, this season takes place in like November of 2016, which was stated earlier in the season when it was like when Lewis had his like backyard like bunker, and Curtis was like, it's November. That one. But yeah, it's basically November of 2016. Assassin's Creed has been out for a while. This is actually funny enough the break here of Assassin's Creed. But anyway, Russo must have played the Assassin's Creed games and built the hidden blade himself. That's my headcanon. I don't care. That is my headcanon. But after a good old little longer of a fight, eventually Frank gets the upper hand when he takes a piece of glass and stabs Russo with it. And then now he has the perfect upper hand because now Russo is too weak to do anything. So Frank punches him a bit, grabs his face, and he just drags it across the mirror, and you just hear him scream, and it's so brutal, and I love it. But he just drags his face across that mirror, and then afterwards he just throws his head into the mirror, and then later on he smashes him again with the mirror, and he is done. But Frank lets him live because he wants to be killed. He's like, kill me! And Frank's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Also, we need you for season 2. Which, this part, I'm kind of a little bit iffy on, because Punisher should kill him. But also, for anyone who doesn't know, Billy Russo in the comic books is a villain known as Jigsaw. This idiot needs to become Jigsaw. So, it's kind of like a middle thing, where it's like, yeah, he needs to become Jigsaw. However, it would be logical for Frank to kill him. But Frank lets him live, lets him bleed there. Then he goes up to Madani. He takes her head, puts his hand over her wound, and waits for the cops to arrive, who then arrive, take them both to the hospital, and then the CIA gives Frank a new identity. Well, not really. It basically just clears him from the system, and now he can live his life as Pete Castiglione. He's back, baby. Good old Pete. So he gets basically a new life, a fresh start, if you will, which is very nice. And Russo may or may not ever wake up. I don't think we actually got a tease at the end of this season where he will wake up. I did not see him open his eyes. Let's just say that, okay? Also, if he wakes up, he may never be able to remember anything. And Madani's like, I hope he remembers everything. So after that, we see the Lieberman family preparing some food. Frank and Micro get to his house, and Frank is like, I'm not going in, okay? I'm not going in. This is your place. You go in there. I gotta start a new life, man. So it's officially goodbye, Micro. And then to end the season off, we have Frank going to group. Yes, he joins Curtis's group therapy thing, and he tells a little story of his. And that's how the season ends. And I actually love how this season ends, because it doesn't really set up a season 2, because it leaves it ambiguous enough, because of the fact that Billy is technically alive, but we don't know if he will ever wake up. And if he wakes up, we don't know if he'll remember anything. And even if he does, he could still be locked up for the rest of his life. So all the plot lines, in a sense, have kind of been tied up. There is no like second season tease. I like that. I love that about this season. And technically season 2 ends that exact same way as well. And if I gotta compliment the Punisher about something, it is especially that. The fact that it ties up its seasons. Real respects for that one. But that's it. That's the end of the Punisher season 1. And I love this season. I have seen people online, especially when this season came out, that didn't like it. People didn't really like this season, especially not the early parts of the season, which I can understand, because it starts off really slow. So I understand where people are coming from, where they're like, yeah, but it's not really the best. It's like, yeah, I know. But the slow burn doesn't really matter for me, because I've still loved this season. I will say that. To me, this is the third best season so far. So far, that is a very important thing, because we still have Daredevil season 3 to go over. But so far, the third best season of the Netflix era. Obviously, it goes Daredevil season 1, Jessica Jones season 1, Punisher season 1. That's like top 3 for me right now. It will be knocked out of that spot, though, and Jessica Jones will fill that spot because of Daredevil season 3. But I actually very much enjoyed the season. I also love how violent it is, how Punisher just kills basically anyone that he can, which that is something that I do agree with some people about season 2. That one, he's less violent, but here he is very violent. However, the caveat on that season is the fact it's a lot faster. So it's like you have less violence, but it's a lot faster, or this one is really slow. And you know, it's like I kind of see the two seasons as being kind of like equal to each other. However, if I did have to pick one, I think that this one's better. I love this season. I may be too nice to this season, but it doesn't matter to me. I've loved it throughout, even the slower parts of this season earlier on. Have really made me actually also enjoy the season. I loved also the interactions between Micro and Punisher. Thought they were really funny together, the way that they interacted. John Bernthal, obviously perfect casting as Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. He owns that role. And yeah, that's about all I can really say about this series that I haven't really already said about in the actual review. I've loved this season from start to finish. Yes, there were slow moments, but overall it is worthy of the name Punisher. So I'm gonna end it here then, since I got nothing else to say. So let me know what you guys thought about the Punisher season 1 in the comment section down below. And with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if you're not already, turn on notifications, and don't forget to check out the Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And I'll see you guys next time in the MCU for the finale, actually, of 2016. However, this movie that we're going to be taking a look at takes place over the course of the entirety of 2016. Yes, indeed. This is technically a long movie, because it kind of starts early in 2016 and it ends after the Punisher season 1, or like around the same time as Punisher season 1. So yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at the magical man himself, Dr. Stephen Strange, also known as Mr. Doctor. Bye!